Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Fireside Chat with Builders FirstSource. I'm Mike Durop from Robotti and Company. Thank you very much for joining us. We are very pleased to have with us today from Builders FirstSource the CEO, Dave Rush, and the CFO, Peter Jackson. Leading the discussion today will be our founder and Chief Investment Officer, Bob Robotti. Should you have any questions, please enter them into the Q&A box, and we will do our best to get them answered for you. Before we begin, I have some important disclosures to read. Please be advised that this event is being recorded. This presentation is for information purposes only and should not be construed as investment advice or a solicitation to invest. Past performance does not indicate future results. Investing involves risk, including loss of principal. Robotti Securities LLC, member FINRA SIPC, Robotti and Company Advisors LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. Now we'll turn it over to Bob to begin. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, Dave. Hi, Peter. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate you making time to visit. We're really happy today to have Dave Rush with us. Of course, as you all know, recently Dave initially took over as the interim CEO and subsequently was identified and named as the permanent CEO. So a lot of good changes going on at the company. And so we think it's a great opportunity to visit with Dave to get his understanding views on the company. So that's why we're here. So thanks again for joining us. So Dave, actually, the first thing I want to do is maybe just start with history, because I find that investors focus in too much on this quarter, what the price of lumber is, all those kind of like detailed numbers. And of course, really to understand kind of the evolution of Builders FirstSource, the business, obviously accelerated by the downturn that happened in 07, 08, 09 in the building business and the subsequent recovery and the consolidation that's gone on in the business. So could you give us your view in terms of, having been there historically before and yet lived through that whole process, your views on what's happened to the distribution business and Builders FirstSource role in that business over the post-financial crisis time?
Sure, Bob. And again, thanks for having me. I think what you've seen post the downturn that occurred in the 2007 through 9 era is somewhat some of the consolidation that's gone on in the industry. And we've been a major player in that role. Of course, in 2015, we did our deal with ProBuild simultaneous in the same year. BMC and Stock came together. So you really had, at that point in time, 4 of the top players that came together and formed 2 fairly significant operations in our space. And then, of course, what happened January of 2021, BMC and BFS came together to create the leading platform that we enjoy today. We've continued in that consolidation progress. We've continued to consolidate and seen opportunities with our focus being primarily on creating additional value add capacity and also filling in our footprint where we could see the MSA growth and where our strategy would dictate that we had a gap to fill. We've benefited from all of that in building this strong platform. We have the most access to the biggest customers throughout the nation. Our value add platform is a huge component of our strategy, and it's a huge stickiness with our customer. That takes labor out of the job site when we're able to create value add products that speed up the building cycle. And as a result, if you put all of that together, we like the position we're in, Bob. We feel like we've got a pretty good, strong presence in the industry, and we're going to continue to build on that in the future as we continue to see opportunity.
Thanks, Dave. So of course, that's the way I kind of see it too. It's not just, of course, the consolidation that's happened in the scale of the company, but it's really the differentiation and the value added difference between the companies, right? Because from my perspective, that's what I saw was, BMC and Builders FirstSource were 2 of the people who were doing a lot of component construction, manufacturing, bringing efficiencies. One of the scarce things we know to home building is labor and the availability of labor. So therefore, to be able to have a differentiated product addressing that is really critical. And so how do you see that? Do you see the same thing in terms of that value-added piece and the combination of the businesses really brought together best in class in a differentiated value add?
You're absolutely right. We 100% agree on the value add and what that brings to the industry. And BMC recognized that benefit, as did BFS before we came together. And now coming together as two companies with that focus has been even stronger. I would even add, the labor shortage we have seen is still here, right? You would think labor shortage would be one of the first things to kind of correct itself. We're not seeing that. We're still seeing the same challenges we saw even as we headed into 23. So we believe that's with us for a while. And as a result, our continued focus on value add. And really, Bob, what we're trying to do is just make it in general easier for our customers to do business. That includes, the kind of customer service that we want to provide just in the regular distribution of business as well. We measure our on-time in full performance. We're trying to create differentiated service arguments for our customers as well. And of course, we're making a huge investment in digital. We believe digital will ultimately unlock the key to making us the most easy to do business with across the spectrum, the full life cycle of the building process. And all our investments around value add will be complemented by our investment in digital, because it'll make it easier for customers to submit plans, get back designs, get back estimates, all the things that right now the industry as a whole has not perfected. We're looking to do that through the digital process and make it easier that way.
So the observation I would have in terms of the component construction, it's not only, of course, the combination of the two kind of larger players in that business, but it's also, since then, you've done some tuck-in acquisitions that further complement that, right? It looks as if the acquisition you made in Texas for Trussway, the acquisition you made in California. So there's a couple of things that you then rounded out. So therefore, to further differentiate and move yourselves ahead in a lot of geographies. Am I seeing that correctly?
You are seeing that correctly. And I like to explain that we're continuing those kind of strategic plays regardless of the current macroeconomic environment. We're looking and playing out that value add strategy over the long term. And that includes in segment differentiation. You might have noticed some of our later acquisitions were into the multifamily space. So we're looking to add capacity in the right markets where we believe the growth or possibly even where truss manufacturing is in its infant stages, like in Texas, for example. It's really pretty early in Texas, but we've seen that it's going to be here and stay with us, and we're making investments to stay ahead of it. The other thing I'd like to add, Bob, was we've made significant investments in the technology of existing operation. We have upgraded lines and upgraded through automation a lot of our existing plants, so we can get more board foot per man hour out of the existing plants, which of course also brings down the cost of providing the product to our customers and helps address the affordability concerns in the marketplace today. Since the merger, our existing plants have increased their board foot per labor hour by over 20%. Mm-hmm. So that's a significant improvement in creating a more competitive product to introduce in the marketplace. And we're really proud of that achievement, as we are the growth strategies that we've employed to increase our capacity.
Right. The uptake of component manufacturing, it seems as if it's critical. And it seemed to me as if actually the advent of COVID and its the effects of it really was positive, right? Because one of the other things I understand is like Texas was a market that had really no adoption of offsite construction, but it really did pick it up because there really is a huge opportunity. There's a significant amount of homes that are still being built that are still being stick framed, and therefore clearly the white space available to therefore implement value add is still dramatic, even though you have a great position and the leading position in it. Is that correct?
I would agree with that as well, Bob. And again, the COVID, brought forth unprecedented demand surge, which further illustrated the labor shortage challenge that we all faced. And that's kind of what led Texas to that movement. And then once they got used to trusses, it becomes a really sticky product. We don't generally have customers move away from truss, even as labor becomes more plentiful. It's just a cleaner, more efficient way to build the home. And, so it still comes back to the labor challenges that we believe will be there for a long period of time. But at the end of the day, our value add strategy has really paid off for us since the merger. And it's just been a proof point for us that we've been focusing on the right things.
One of the things you mentioned was the extending into related businesses close by, multifamily. So I would think also that one of the opportunities really is in kind of repair remodel, which historically has been a smaller component of the business. And that probably ties into some of the digital things you're talking about too. So therefore, and of course, that seems as if it's an excellent opportunity. We all know at high interest rates and, you know, the cost of homes going up from every input, whether that's labor, or whether that's materials, or whether that's land to land availability, that, you know, it seems as if there's a huge amount of housing stock that eventually needs to be replaced. But in the meantime, a lot of it needs to be repaired and remodeled. And that's a business that, even with higher interest rates, is probably going to have a lot of uptake and potential. And so your participation there and the opportunity, given it's historically been a smaller piece, how do you see that playing out, and what do you see your role in that business?
Well, the increasing mortgage rates is certainly taking existing home sale inventory off the market, right? Which is telling you indirectly people are staying in their homes longer. Right. And as a result, R&R is definitely going to be a space that we want to play in and be more active in. Now, counter in the COVID era, it was hard to focus on the repair and remodel segment because our capacity was taken by our existing new construction business. Now we've actually got a little more opportunity to focus on that segment and are doing so. We ultimately feel our digital platform is going to be the key to unlocking our ability to really scale that business through our existing lumber yards, because we're going to make it easier for R&R guys to source product from us through the digital platform. So that is a key component of why digital. In addition to revolutionizing the new home building industry, we also want to have better access to that R&R market.
And it would seem to me as if that kind of emphasizes and highlights the opportunity set, given your position in your markets as they are, to identify the slowdown provides an opportunity, as you're saying, to redirect attention, to build out another leg of the stool, and therefore make that a bigger component is something that you have the financial flexibility to do, have enough market position in the businesses you're in. So even as there's a subsiding in activities there, you can really go after something and continue to build out the opportunities for profits.
That's a very fair and accurate statement. What we found over the years is you can't halfway be in the business, right? Where we're successful today in R&R, you got to be dedicated to it. And a lot of where we've had success is where we've done through M&A, the T.W. Perry, the National up in the Northeast. We're good at it on the West Coast. You have to be dedicated to that customer segment. You can't kind of try to dabble in it. You got to go in wholesale, and it's because their inventory requirements are different than what they are with new home builders. So that's part of our strategy, is finding where that makes sense to make those kind of investments, and we're doing so. For example, in Pinehurst, North Carolina, we've got a showroom that's dedicated directly to R&R because the segment there and the opportunity there warrants the investment. So that's kind of how we make those decisions, Bob, but we're definitely making it part of our strategy going forward.
And then, of course, it does seem as if, of course, actually, obviously in lumber and sheet goods, you know, you have a preeminent position, but of course, other things related to home building in terms of doors, windows, siding, other things like that. And it seems as if some of the digital things you're doing potentially increase the opportunity to capture some more of that market share of those other products. Am I correct in that? And how do you see that in terms of not just selling, you know, to selling more associated with the new home as opposed to, you know, just lumber and lumber sheet goods?
Well, the digital platform will definitely be a key, because that's where the homeowner through our builder customer will make selections, right? Mm-hmm. And if we make it easier for them to make selections, and in fact, you know, we'll also have the ability to kind of steer them towards certain selections, that will ultimately make it easier for our builder customer to know which windows, which siding that they want to lead with, and it'll allow us to better service that possible sale.
So one of the opportunities that would seem to me clear and obvious is, given your footprint and given how as an investor, maybe investors tend to think home building is home building. And the fact of the matter is the regional differences in each market are so different from other markets. I do recall my days on the BMC board, ReadyFrame was invented up in the Seattle market. And it was something, therefore, they tried, it started there, and therefore you could take something and move it around. And I imagine that's what you have is footprints, products, differentiation that really can see what's happening, where are opportunities. And of course, not every product can be exported to other markets, but the fact of the matter is the database of information you have and the insight into things, and therefore identifying things earlier and therefore adapted across the platform is one of the great strengths of Builders FirstSource.
That at the root of our scale is what drives our ability to drive a good idea across the spectrum, right? ReadyFrame's a pretty good example. You're exactly right. BMC was great at it in the upper Northwest, and we were good at it in the upper Northwest. And we've been able to take best practices there and try to see where else that it can be a complementary product in other parts of the country. And what we like to use ReadyFrame for is another option, right? We want to be able to sell you trusses, but if you don't want or aren't ready for trusses now, we've got ReadyFrame ready for you. We want to sell you panels. If you don't want panels now, we got ReadyFrame ready for you now. And we've been very successful using it as a complementary product where it's as a way to introduce it to a region. And then as we get a foothold in that region, we dial it in and it becomes, hopefully it'll be just like it is in the Pacific Northwest for us.
So I've identified a couple of things. What are some things that you see also in terms of home building and value add and what your role is and where you think there's really some excellent opportunities? We have touched on one or two of them already, but give you a floor here to call out other things that, right, an outsider I really I think I know the business reasonably well, but I'm sure I miss nuances that potentially have significant potential opportunities.
Well, we believe in all value add is good sales. So millwork and windows for sure. And we have the capability and we have specialists in markets to make sure that we allow customers the most access to to whatever solution works for them in their home. And what we ultimately believe the digital innovations tying it all together is a value added component of the sale that isn't necessarily based on product. But we still focus primarily on truss. We believe truss has the best value proposition. In total, our value add was 52% in the fourth quarter. We still believe that will, on a relative basis, have a strong presence in value added in our mix. It's a higher margin profile product for us because it solves more problems for the builder customer, and they're willing to pay more because of it's solving more problems for them. Any other value add opportunities? Well, fully component, that would kind of be the next step. Peter, go ahead and talk about how we discuss that.
Certainly, we live in very interesting times. Our delving into the digital arena, the work we've done both on the strategy, on the product development, on talking with our customers about how we can help create a platform that they can leverage to be better at what they do, our home builder customers, has really pointed to a couple of areas that digital can really, we think, accelerate. One good example of that is a business we bought a number of years ago. It used to be known by the name Rainey Construction in North Florida, where they do a more complete version of pulling the components that we already do into a full shell manufacture. And it has a lot of great advantages. We have a number of customers that have taken advantage of it in that market, but it's been a tricky one to think about spreading to the rest of the country because of the precision required, the capacity required, and the customer adoption required. But if you think about the nature of a three-dimensional digital twin, like we've got built into our digital strategy, that level of accuracy and precision in the structural design of a home allows you to start to introduce far more in the way of offerings, services, time and efficiency savings for our customers than has ever been possible in the past because of being able to do it with precision. So there's an excitement that we carry into this in terms of where we can go ultimately. But it's really, like Dave said, down that road of value add, where how can we make our customers more efficient, take out waste, and be part of the solution.
So I can envision in the future where we may offer a more modularized, beyond just the truss, a more modularized product. But in the interim, we're also trying to figure out how to do truss better. And with more automation, we've got investments in robotics and trying to address labor concerns not only outside of our factories, but inside of our factories. And, so all part of the overall value add strategy, but not necessarily beyond, looking at maybe ways to expand the Rainy concept, getting outside in other different product groups.
One of the aspects I think that public market investors lose is, this is still, not only is it a very regional business and with huge differentiation in different markets, the customer bases are really very different, right? Because, the public investors always know the publicly traded home builders. And the fact of the matter is, in many markets, of course, the home builders are still small, localized home builders. And somehow that, how does that play out? That you really don't have a homogeneous customer group that, every public company investors know, but there's really half your market or even more probably is people we don't know. And so what opportunities does that give you, and what extra benefits of your scale do you get from that fragmented customer?
Yeah, I think it's a preferable position to be in, really, to have a diversified customer base. You address each of those groups. We address national builder needs differently than the custom builder needs. Custom builders generally are more one-on-one relationship oriented. With the national guys, it's more about programs generally, and making sure that we're doing what we need to do to meet the time commitments that we've agreed to on the pricing that we've agreed to, and that everything's clean with the paperwork, because it's volume, right? I mean, and it's everything you want to make sure you handle correctly on a volume standpoint, while not dismissing. We want a good relationship with those customers as well. So we focus on the relationship with those guys, just like we do the transactions and the volume, but it is a little different relationship with a custom guy, because generally our sales guys for a custom guy are more like a consultant almost. They help him with higher premium window selections, higher premium exterior door selections. They're generally building a more unique house, and it's certainly generally a more expensive house. It generally takes longer. Trust they have to learn about. There's a little more involved design factor for a high value, a high dollar custom house than doing a national builder home 100 times the same way. So it is different. There is opportunity because it's different, but you also got to address those differences with the right amount of skill to make sure that you're addressing the concern that he brings to the party.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We love both. We love all our customers.
The only thing I'd throw into that mix is the digital play. And part of the reason why we think digital is really important for that more than 50% of the starts done by the smaller builders is because they generally don't have the scale to invest in some of these IT type solutions that we're investing in, right? So by building a single platform and allowing more of them to access it, we think that obviously makes them better, more professional, more efficient. We believe in that. But we think by offering that, it also increases our perception as the partner of choice, right? We want them to see us as someone who helps them and can be that facilitator for getting stuff done on the job site. And digital will be an important part of that for the smaller guys.
That's a great point.
Right. So of course, I think pretty much everybody knows that. What is it? A third of all energy consumption is associated with buildings, and therefore energy loss. And so I'm assuming that's also potentially an opportunity, again, for your knowledge, identifying things. And so, am I right? Where's the opportunity that people are, cognizant of the fact that my home is definitely part of what is consuming and producing CO2 ultimately? And, how do I do things differently? And how do I therefore play a role there and differentiate ourselves?
Yeah, that's a great point. And where we have opportunity, there's generally like within the product selection standpoint, right? There's times where you can look at a product that is an exterior sheathing product that would then allow you to have a lower HVAC tonnage. And it deals with how we insulate the home. and certain things like that. So there's opportunities there. In the past, this is an interesting change. In the past, it was always, what did it cost to add that product to the home, and what is it going to save, and how am I going to get my money back? Now it's as equally concerned of how can I do better for the environment? I mean, it isn't always just a cost versus benefit analysis anymore. And you know, what product allows me to build more of a green home? We definitely have customers that are focused exclusively on that, which is good to see. And I mean, it does offer opportunity for us, but it comes down to us advising on which product does what and allows for a what the ultimate result you want out of the process.
Mm-hmm.
And not to beat a dead horse, digital can be a tremendous asset for us in that environment, right? The three-dimensional digital twin starts to allow you to model things that you used to have to experiment with.
Mm-hmm.
It shows before you start the build where you have opportunity and where you possibly have what we call a collision that would take you in the opposite direction you want to go in, but you have to solve for it in the field instead of solve for it on a laptop, which is substantially cheaper.
So what is your view on the next 3 to 5 years? Where are some of the big opportunities that, you know, you're extremely well positioned to be able to take advantage of, that you really see potentially moving the meter and moving the profit opportunities that Builders FirstSource has for itself?
Well, we want to follow our playbook, right? We're going to continue to try to grow organically and primarily focusing on value-added products and that growth. We're going to invest in digital and lead in the digital innovation in our space. We believe that will make the building process easier for our customers, and we'll be the winners as a result of providing that solution. We're still going to invest in our people. We've put a lot of training programs in place during this year, again, for the long-term look. A lot of people would look and say, hey, possibly uncertain year, what are we going to do? Let's cut training. We're not doing that. We're doing the existing training program and trying to create opportunities for our people just like we always would. And we're looking for and continuing to scout out potential M&A that'll solve a strategic solution for us down the road. So we believe doing all of that consistently while we're looking at where we can do continuous improvement in this environment, which pays greater dividends in a tough environment. We're going to just continually move the needle in the right direction. And when this thing breaks on the outside of this, current headwind around mortgage rates and things settle, we're going to be in prime position to be going full speed again. We're looking at it over the long term, not the short term. We're going to continue to invest in the business the way we have. And then lastly, but not unimportantly, we're going to continue to allocate capital in the right manner. We're going to look at investing in the business first. We're going to look at M&A second. And ultimately, if we see the opportunity, we're going to continue to invest in share buybacks where it makes sense.
Right.
We still believe we're undervalued based on where we stand and what we've proven versus where we're getting credit. So we're going to always take advantage of that opportunity as it relates to the sequence we've all laid out and the board's agreed to on how we should invest that capital. Anything you want to add to that?
I think that prioritization is key, but we're doing the analysis on all the pieces. So we really do feel good that the ways we're approaching our capital allocation are all advantageous to shareholders. We just we have a lot of great options, and we think putting them together in a comprehensive way like we have really optimizes.
For whatever it's worth, I would observe that the significant amount of free cash that you do have lets you have your cake and eat it too. So therefore you can execute on all of these things simultaneously, as opposed to having to select one or the other, and therefore be able to not be opportunistic with all the things that come to you. So one of the things you mentioned was continuing to invest in people, and people is a critical element here. And of course, over the years, having visited, 25 different builders, BMC sites all over the country, I've met many of the people in markets that are like critical people who really understand their marketplace, or part of the talent pool that Builders has. But of course, recently, you did make you did appoint Steve Herron as the Chief Operating Officer. And I guess that's part of the picture. So therefore, help us all get a better sense as to the people and Steve and what that is and how that's an opportunity and amplification of the people advantages that Builders has?
Yeah, one of my favorite stats I like to share is our field leadership at the upper levels averages 32.8 years of experience. That's great and very comforting, especially as a new CEO, to have that level of experience. But it also lets me know we also got to prepare a bench for down the road, right? Steve is a great developer of new talent. That's kind of what I would say is his strength, in addition to the fact he's been in the business for 40 years and knows operations backwards and forwards. So one of his main charges is kind of develop the bench and continue to create opportunity. Now we go all the way down to the lowest level. We have a management training program that's being rolled out throughout all of the regions to identify our potential new possible management candidates and put them through the process to create that bench. But along the way, what we want to do is also offer opportunity to make sure if and when the 32.8 years of service, people start, reaching that point where they're ready to retire, we have a plan in place. To that end, we've done full succession planning that we did at the tail end of 2022 and are ready to go. What Steve's going to be charged with and making sure the talent is ready to assume the responsibility when the responsibility needs the talent. So that's first and foremost one of his charges. The other is, I've learned, Bob, CEO, I don't get to dive into operations the way I used to like or would like to. I mean, it's just a reality. We've got we've got some initiatives around growth and digital, and we're trying to make sure we execute on all those. And what I want to make sure is we don't lose sight of what we're asking the operations to do, and at the same time, we want to make sure the operations are fully aligned with how we're going with that digital strategy. Having Steve in that role helps ensure that, even though we had 3 division presidents, Steve was one of those. Those 3 guys worked really good together, but it was still 3, right? At some point, I like to know that the buck stops with one person. Now we have that. It's a person that I have a lot of experience with and trust. And I know he's a great developer of people, which was the key component for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to jump in with a question from the Q&A real quickly.
Sure.
You've done a nice job regarding your targets from your 2021 Investor Day. And the question is regarding, do you anticipate any new or updated targets for investors?
Yeah, so we've got a schedule we're trying to keep to. We're thinking that every 2 years to do an investor day would be a smart way to sort of refresh the story, give people an update on our progress. Like you mentioned, we feel really good about where we've been able to get so far. Certainly, we've had some market benefits up until more recently, and so we'll work through the current environment. But our hope is that later on this year, we'll sit down again, be able to talk to you about our progress and our expectations going forward.
Peter, the problem with that is you already probably hit all the goals that you did when you had an investor day long before. So to make us wait 2 years when you've already done all those things, it's like we're hungry for more. Anyway, that makes sense.
We crossed a lot of thresholds really quickly. You're right.
Well, the good timing of the December update is it'll also allow us to showcase a lot of our digital assets, and we're really happy to be able to do that.
So one of the things we haven't talked about is, my observation would be that, so we talked about customers, we didn't really talk about suppliers. And of course, post the financial crisis, it seems to me as if the supplier base in pretty much everything related to home building is dramatically different and it's been consolidated down. And so just as distributors, you have led the consolidation in the distributor end of the business. There's been a lot in the supplier end of the business too. How do you think that, potentially that's changed the business to date and has the opportunity to change things in the date? And your role as such an important distributor, how does that potentially change your positioning vis-a-vis those suppliers and vis-a-vis competitors?
We have, I'm really proud of our relationships with our competitors. I think we've got the best partners in the industry. I mean, the one thing I would say is we all struggled through the COVID challenges and the supply chain challenges that were a result of that. And for the most part, that's come back to normal, right? For the most part, we're in pretty good shape there. But we want to partner with those guys to continue to look for ways to take cost out of the business for the end users, and make sure that our manufacturing facilities and their manufacturing facilities stay full, because that's when we're the most efficient. Any other add you have for the supplier community?
No, I think that just that idea of staying close to vendors, keeping those relationships positive has been a big focus for us. Now, certainly we've tried to be, smart about those relationships and pick the right partners. And the way we do that is very thoughtful, but we're very inclusive, and we try and maintain their development with ours, because it's a symbiotic relationship.
And I would say the consolidation on the manufacturer supplier side of the equation has not to date had a negative impact on us at all. Generally, our partnerships are still existing the way they were prior to those deals, and for the most part, in some cases, even get stronger if it's the right player that ends up on top.
Well, I would imagine one of the benefits, and my inventories, right? So one of the problems with distributors and manufacturers, if there's not coordination, is potentially there's inventory and inventory stuffing all over the place. I would think that that's not an issue today, right? That inventories are lean, and part of that is fewer distributors, more going directly through one-step distributors, not two-step distributors, manufacturers getting better response in terms of end market demand, so therefore moderating production. And so therefore, one of the issues that you might have is elongated problems because you've got inventory. And so that's really not an issue. Am I correct in that assessment?
Yeah, you're correct in that assessment. There was the opposite of that at the beginning of the year, right? We probably had too much inventory in certain products as the channel adjusted to lesser starts and lesser volume that, happened during the back half of last year. That's all settled. I mean, I think it's pretty, we're in pretty good shape with inventories being on hand where we want them to be, on order where we want them to be, and then the ability to supply on time being where we want it to be. There's still a few products, I think small, like garage doors, are still a problem for some reason. I think, there's certain premium exterior doors still take a little bit of time. Some of the premium window categories still take a little bit of time, but for the most part, it's getting closer to the norm.
And we stay very focused internally at keeping lean inventories. We always want enough, right? As a distributor, you never want to run out, but keeping them lean and keeping them turning. That's always been a key part of our strategy. And I think, as Dave said, that's how we move very quickly through the declining starts market. And you didn't see a lot of noise from us, right? We just got it done.
So, of course, one of the things that I've always been a little bit fascinated by the business is that, there are silos in this business, right? So, roofing products really get, you're really not in the roofing business. Wallboard is a business you're not in. So there are other verticals. Would that ever be something that you consider doing, is extending the verticals? Because I guess ABC Supply, right, 3, 4, 5 years ago, whenever it was, they bought L&W. So you had a roofing company that also sold some siding in competition with you, then got into the wallboard business. So therefore entered a different vertical. Was that ever something that might be on the table?
I would never say never. I think what we learned when we did play in those businesses was similar to what I said about R&R. You really got to either be committed to that business. You can't really play in it. You got to be one of the players if you're going to get in that business. So I don't think it would be a situation where we dabbled in it. I mean, it would have to be a major play, and I don't know of anything like that at this point in time. Yeah.
Right. But just a particular question here. I have to stay away from the details in the short term, but so the buyback program, how is that currently being executed? What do you think about that, and what is the thought process on a 3 to 5 year basis? How that makes sense to buy back shares at this valuation today?
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to that previous comment around how we think about capital allocation more broadly. Our strategy is hopefully very clear to everybody. Focusing on that balance sheet, making sure we've got the right maturities, the right liquidity, and the right cash flows to maintain and be absolutely rock solid. We know there's some cyclicality to our business. So our solution to that is to ensure that we're absolutely rock solid and foundational in our balance sheet. We've done that work. So, you look, we don't have maturities until 2030. We've got plenty of liquidity. So that allows us to really work to deploy that cash flow and look for the most, the most beneficial ways for our shareholders. And we of course, we want to maintain the core, right? Reinvesting in our buildings, in our fleet, in our core systems, critical. You can't hollow out from within to save a few bucks. And we're doing that, but it's not a business that requires the amount of cash that we generate. So
Right.
That's where the other doors open, right? That organic investment in growth is an important one. New facilities, particularly in markets like we talked about, places like Texas, where you don't have the capacity that you can even buy from somebody else. It just doesn't exist yet. So those types of investments, efficiency investments, like Dave mentioned, about how do we ensure that we've got the best cost position in any of the key products that we sell, so that we get to choose our customers and we get to choose how the market progresses. That's critically important over time.
Mhm.
But that also is not enough to use up all of our cash. So the ability to invest, to do those acquisitions, critical. And what's left, right? We think it's important that we keep that share buyback as the next priority. It's something always available to us in terms of actionability. What becomes important then is the analysis of the ROI. And
Mhm.
as you know, Bob, we put some pretty aggressive long-range plan numbers out there. We continue to modify that and maintain it for our current thinking. And our observation that with all of the shares that we've repurchased, more than a third of the outstanding shares have been repurchased in the last 18 months.
Right.
That we think is a fundamental reset on our valuation. And while we might not be getting credit for all of that right now, given the sentiment around home building and our place in it, we absolutely believe over time people are going to recognize that. And that gives us a lot of confidence that it's still a very smart way to deploy capital. Looking at the stock price where it is, still below its all-time high, even though there are a third less shares, that's a pretty good storyline when
Mhm.
it comes on ROI. So
Mhm.
we're continuing to keep our eyes open. We'll continue to be, opportunistic where it makes sense, but we'll continue to deploy capital. That's part of the strategy. We're not going to sit on it.
Mhm. And what haven't I covered? What should I cover? What have I missed? What's relevant that you'd like to have us know?
I don't think we've talked about digital. We should talk about digital.
Yeah. I would just kind of summarize by saying we're really looking back and where we've come and where we're going. It's just an exciting time to be with BFS. I can remember when we talked about being a third the size of ProBuild, yet we were going to buy ProBuild, and I was going, I don't know, how are we going to pull this off? And then we really blended together really well. The cultures blended really well. Then BMC and Stock said, hey, wait a minute, we got to get in on this party. And then ultimately we come together with those guys. And when I think about what you said, 2007 and 2008, and here we were, four dogs all going after one really small bone at the time. And now we've got what we would say is a fairly healthy scenario, even though it's a little depressed right now. Over the long term, a really healthy opportunity. And we four come together really well as one. And I give a lot of credit to the field leadership for blending these cultures together, because I do believe that, we do act as one in the markets that we serve. And that's been a powerful beginning point. Now we complement that with value add and how we've taken the lead in that category. And then now we're going to come over the top with a digital solution that the industry has been needing for years, but never anybody solving the pieces to the puzzle. They've solved parts of the puzzle, but never the end-to-end solution that really is what it's going to take to be able to satisfy the return on what we're building. And we still feel really good about our $1 billion. We believe we'll get $1 billion worth of sales pull through from this fully rolled out and developed product by 2026. So I just think we're in a really good spot. I mean, I think we've done great use with our cash. I give all the credit to Peter and his team on how we develop a capital allocation strategy, board approved, and then executed against that strategy. I think our M&A has paid off in every scenario. I just feel really good about the company, Bob, and I'd hate to not end with some kind of a summarization like that, but I'm willing to take any other questions as well.
No, and of course, that's what I would observe is like it's been a phenomenal decade. and the things that the companies have accomplished in consolidation, but it's not just the size and the scale, it's really the product differentiation, helping, because it's still, building a home is still an antiquated process. And therefore the digital solution clearly has a huge opportunity to really transform the business and do something that's critical to the country, right? Affordability of housing is definitely the current headwind that, it's hard to get away from because interest rates probably aren't going back down. So we have to adapt to, things will cost more money, but yet people need to live someplace. And,
That's right.
the need for housing is greater than how much is out there. And so, it will happen, it will come, and you're in a well position to be able to take advantage, it would seem. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
All right. All right. Okay, Mike, any other questions? Anybody else that got any questions before we let Dave go and get back to work? Although, Dave, you did give Peter a whole bunch of credit there for like great capital allocation. It seems to me like, no, I think you guys in the field delivering product and having customer relationship generated the cash
But we
for
definitely
him to have the cash.
We gave him the cash to make it happen.
That's right. That's
and they gave him the cash to make it happen.
But that's good though. You have a teamwork to be able to deliver, generate the cash, and then deploy it really intelligently to continue to compound the value. That's a phenomenal combination. So thanks again for being there. So nice to meet you, Dave, and spend some time with you in Las Vegas at the home building show and now, and I look forward to spending more time with you. Thanks so much.
Bob, really appreciate you having me. And this was a great time. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Peter. Great.
Thanks,
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Great.